Hey everyone, Greg from Second Amendment Sports and Defense. Today I have with me the newly released Remington R51 9mm subcompact pistol. I say newly released as opposed to new because this firearm was initially released in 2014. And unfortunately, due to certain malfunctions relating to design issues, Remington issued a massive recall on this firearm and really spent the better part of the next 2 years reevaluating, redesigning, manufacturing, and testing the new variant. And here in mid-August 2016, they finally re-released it. And I believe that it is now a formidable competitor to other firearms in its class, such as the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Shield, the Ruger LC9S, and the Springfield Armory XDS series. So when looking at subcompact 9mm handguns for concealed carry, I tend to consider three factors. And in no particular order, they are concealability and comfort, ease of use and maintenance, and functionality, and of course reliability. So let's look at the concealability characteristics of this firearm. The Remington R51 is 1.08 inches wide, so just over an inch wide, 6.6 inches in length, and 4.6 inches high. And it weighs 20 ounces. So in all, it's very similar to other firearms in its class. It is about a ½ inch longer than the Smith & Wesson Shield, and it weighs about 1 ounce more than the Smith & Wesson Shield. Now, that extra weight comes primarily from the fact that, unlike most manufacturers on the market producing this class of firearm today, Remington chose to go with an aluminum alloy frame as opposed to a polymer frame. So that does add a little bit of weight, but certainly theoretically adds to the durability of the firearm and the life of the firearm. So that's a trade-off that I'm not hesitant at all to make. So that being said, there are various manufacturers already producing holsters for this firearm, and certainly over the coming months as this gains in popularity, there are going to be many more in the waistband holsters, even in the pocket holsters, available for this firearm. So let's look at the functionality of it. A big issue that I have with concealed carry firearms deals with working with customers. Now, I don't tend to look at it through the lens of me as the shooter myself, because I know what my capabilities are. I have different individuals coming in, certainly old folks, young folks, different backgrounds of shooting, highly experienced shooters, and people who have never touched a handgun in their life. And trying to set them up with a firearm that fits them, that they can operate, is sort of a challenge sometimes. So one of the key things that we tend to look at is, can the customer operate the slide of that handgun? So if you've noticed yourself, or if you've seen others struggle with that, that's definitely an issue. People sometimes lack the hand strength to get a firm grip on that slide to be able to cock it to the rear, or maybe due to factors such as arthritis or even age. It just, there's several factors that can affect that. What I will say is Remington did a very good job, and that's attributed really to the type of action that they decided to use, which we'll go over in a minute. But basically, this firearm, I'm going to just demonstrate, without gripping the slide in any way, I'm going to take my index finger and I'm going to put it on the rear sight, and I'm simply going to apply rearward pressure. And I'm able to lock the slide to the rear without gripping the frame or without gripping the slide whatsoever. That speaks volumes, because there is not one other handgun of the probably 300 handguns that I have in my cases in the shop here that I can do that with. So definitely props to Remington for being able to accomplish that. Now, that being said, also, one thing that I noticed right off the bat is the slide stop lever. When releasing the slide, very little effort, very little thumb strength or dexterity is required. That's another issue that I see. Many of these subcompact 9mm handguns are very stiff. Takes 200 to 300 rounds to be able to break them in to the point where you can operate that slide stop lever proficiently. This firearm has not been fired out of the factory. I just took it out of the box. I just took it out of the box about an hour ago, and already it's very easy to operate. So some of the other features, let's look at the safety features. All modern handguns are really designed with internal safety features, such as what we call drop safeties or firing pin blocks that prevent the firearm from discharging from any other condition other than when the trigger itself is pulled. So that being said, Remington decided to forego the manual thumb safety on this in favor of a backstrap safety. So again, in addition to the internal safeties, we also have a safety device here that is deactivated when the firearm is simply gripped. So in essence, disengaging the safety is no more complicated than maintaining a proper grip on the firearm. That's another plus because there's always an argument whether to go with a safety or not a safety. This kind of simplifies that argument as well. For the people that do desire a manual safety of some sort, this definitely fills that void. And people who are hesitant of using a thumb safety for reasons that they're afraid they might, under duress, forget to disengage it, this solves that issue as well. So let's move on to the trigger itself. This firearm uses a 4.5 pound trigger pull. It's very light, it's very crisp. Again, very little effort whatsoever needed to pull it. Certainly not the range of motion required as in many hammer-fired semi-automatic pistols. The one thing that I will say, kind of a complaint that I have, deals with the reset. There is no tactile or audible reset with this firearm. And I've read initial reports that some people were having issues with that on the range. I'm going to see when I take it out on the range today as well. One other thing also, the magazine release, it is ambidextrous, but the magazine release, in an effort to make it flush with the frame, Remington did somewhat make it difficult to depress. It requires a little bit of extra thumb strength and dexterity to release that magazine. But again, it's ambidextrous, so the shooter can decide whether, if it's easier, maybe to use their index finger. In my case, I'm noticing that it is, but again, I don't want to change. I train always releasing the magazine with my thumb, so that's how I would accomplish this. But either way, the magazine isn't too difficult to release. I wouldn't let that be a deterrent in considering this firearm. That's just one of the quirks that it has. So when talking about ease of use and maintenance, I'm going to break away here. I'm going to get a mat out, and I'm going to disassemble it for you. It's by no means designed to be a tutorial of the firearm, but I want to show you a little bit of the nuances regarding the unique action that this firearm has. Okay, so considering all of the positive points that I've just made regarding the Remington R51, I do have to say that they come at an expense. There is a trade-off. Honestly, this firearm is somewhat difficult to disassemble, but again, it's not an arduous task. It's something that if you own the firearm, if you've done it quite often, repetitively, it's something you're going to get used to. So it's first to understand that this firearm is based off of the Remington Model 51 of the early 1900s. If you're not familiar with that model, it's built similar to the Walther PPK with a stationary barrel. It is designed with a Pedersen action, which consists of a locking breech block and operates using a hesitation-locked system. So disassembly of the Remington R51 pistol begins not dissimilar than many other models in its class. We're first going to remove the magazine. We're going to check our chamber, visually inspect our chamber for ammunition, make sure that it's unloaded. We're going to bring the slide to the rear slightly, about a third of its distance of travel there, and we're going to line the two notches, the notch in the slide itself, and there's a tab on the slide stop lever. Now we can push the slide stop lever from the other side of the frame, but basically it's going to pass through that notch right there, like so. Okay, now this is very important. Because of how the breech block locks into place when the firearm is in battery, we can't let the slide return to battery. We have to maintain kind of this position here. And I was intrigued at first when I saw this design on the front of the barrel. What that is a grip. It's designed to allow you to grasp the front of the barrel so you can simply pull it away from the firearm. Because again, if that slide returns to battery, that locking block is going to engage and it's not going to want to budge. Okay, so from this point, we're going to remove our breech block. This is not user serviceable. We're just going to clean what we can see. Obviously, if you have an aerosol lubricant or an aerosol solvent, that will work well as well. Our frame, nothing in it's user serviceable, so we're going to set that aside as well. Okay, now this part gets tricky. I'm probably going to make it harder than I'm going to make it look harder than it actually is. So as part of this Pedersen action, we have a bushing that has to be brought out of the slide. See what happens when you let go of that thing. Okay, the breech, or I'm sorry, that bushing has to come out of the slide just like that through this little notch. Now that didn't require a lot of strength. It wasn't really it wasn't really difficult to do. It's just figuring out how to manipulate it to where you can get it apart. And again, this is something that if you've done it a few times, it'll be rather easy. And then the firearm disassembles just like that. You have your spring, that bushing as well, the barrel. So in lubricating it, again, just like with any firearm, you want to lubricate anywhere where there's metal on metal passing against one another. So reassembly is just the reverse. We're going to install our bushing. We're going to install our spring. Now the tricky part about this is the slide itself does not have a bushing like a 1911 does, for instance. So aligning the barrel with the port on the front of the slide can get a little bit tricky. That spring tends to want to get in the way. I'm going to put this in. So you see how I did that? I just pushed that bushing forward into that notch. And we can push it down inside. And there we go. Our breech block is going to sit right back down inside the frame. And again, we're going to want to insert our slide while maintaining hold of that barrel. And then everything will click into place. As you pull the slide onto the frame, you'll feel everything click into place. We can reinsert our slide stop lever, and the firearm is reassembled. A quick functions check. And there we are. Alright, we're out at the range. I've got the Remington R51 9mm subcompact pistol. It is packaged with the standard 7-round magazine, so I've got 7 rounds loaded in that. And what I'm firing today is the Federal RTP 115 grain 9mm cartridge. Now I realize if you're concealed carrying, you're going to be using a slightly more potent cartridge perhaps, but this is what I brought to test this out at the range today. Let's see how it works. A little bit of hang up right there on that first cartridge loading, but let's see. Alright, this is our target after firing the Remington R51 9mm pistol. It was set up about 20 feet, maybe 21 feet. I'm very, very, very impressed with these results. A little bit low, a little bit to the left. But again, I wasn't firing too particularly slow. I wasn't really taking my time there. Maybe a little bit of drift. I honestly wasn't paying attention if I was drifting up or drifting down with it. I tend to think I was perhaps drifting up. But again, very impressive results with this pistol. In closing, I'm very enthusiastic about the Remington R51 9mm subcompact pistol, and I believe that it is a formidable competitor to other firearms in its class like the Smith & Wesson M&P9 Shield, the Ruger LC9S, and the Springfield XDS series. Especially after having fired it, I've developed an even more positive opinion. One note, the low bore axis, the lighter slide assembly, and longer lock time that's part and parcel to the unique action of this firearm really helped to reduce the felt recoil, making it absolutely a viable option for shooters who simply can't deal with excessive recoil. Again, it doesn't eliminate all the recoil, but it makes it manageable, and the firearm does function very well, as I've demonstrated on the range today. At Second Amendment Sports and Defense, we are firearms experts, so if you ever have any questions at all or want to see more video reviews, please visit us on the web at www.morgantownguns.com. Definitely click the link to our Facebook page and follow us on Facebook, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel as we do post videos periodically. Thanks for joining me today.